the morning everything changed started, with the sound of Karen's heels clicking across the gravel outside. My barn, sharp, impatient, and full of the kind of confidence only someone who believes the world exists for their approval can carry. I hadn't even turned around when she barked, "This barn is far too rustic for our neighborhood aesthetic." That was the moment I realized I was dealing with a storm in the shape of a woman, and the story that followed would unravel into one of the most unexpected turnarounds my quiet countryside road had ever witnessed. My barn had stood for nearly 80 years, weathered but proud, built by my grandfather, and restored by me with as much respect for its history as I could manage. Sure, it had old wooden beams and metal hinges from another era, but that was its charm. Our area wasn't governed by any homeowners association, yet that didn't stop Karen from treating every property like her personal kingdom. She strutted around with a clipboard. Yes, a real clipboard, as if she were conducting an inspection no one had asked for. She stopped beside the barn door, squinting as if the building personally offended her. "The wood is uneven. The color is depressing. And that roof?" She shook her head dramatically. "Completely outdated. It lowers the visual standard of the entire neighborhood." I stared at her speechless. "Karen, it's a barn," I finally said. "It's supposed to look rustic." "Not this rustic," she snapped. "I'll be submitting a formal complaint." To whom I had no idea. Maybe the universe. But here's the twist. While she spent her time lecturing me about appearances, she was secretly planning a renovation of her own home, one she bragged about at every chance. "It's going to be the most modern house on the entire road," she said, tossing her hair like a dramatic movie villain. "My contractor says it'll pass inspection with flying colors." Funny thing, her renovation would soon break 20 building codes before she even finished the framing. But that part comes later. What matters now is how her crusade against my barn triggered a chain of events neither of us saw coming. Because when someone goes looking for flaws in others, it's only a matter of time before their own cracks begin to show, and Karen's were big enough to drive a tractor through. Little did I know, her complaint would spark attention from people I hadn't heard from in years, draw neighbors to my driveway, and set off a rivalry that grew wilder with every day. What started as irritation would soon turn into something memorable. 3 days after Karen's dramatic announcement, I was stacking hay bales inside the barn, when a white county truck rolled up my driveway. The logo on the door, Building and Safety Division, told me everything I needed to know. I didn't have to guess who had called them. Only one person believed my barn was a threat to civilization. Karen. The inspector stepped out, a polite man named Harris, who looked like he had already dealt with 5 Karens before lunch. He held a folder, flipped it open, and sighed. "We received a complaint regarding unsafe construction, structural hazards, and, let me read this exactly, a tragic lack of aesthetic responsibility." I rubbed my face. "Yeah, that sounds like her." He walked around the barn slowly, checking the beams, hinges, siding, roof lines. The more he inspected, the more his eyebrows relaxed. "Honestly, this is one of the sturdiest barns I've seen out here. Whoever restored it knew what they were doing." "That would be my grandfather," I said proudly. Harris nodded. "Well, she asked us to evaluate your property, so we had to come. But I can already tell you, there are no violations here. 0. In fact, some of these old features are historically valuable." As he made notes, Karen herself marched across the road, holding a coffee cup like a trophy. "Well," she demanded, "did you tell him it needs to be modernized?" Inspector Harris gave her a weary smile. "Ma'am, this structure is perfectly compliant. In fact, it's a great example of preserved rural architecture." Karen blinked rapidly. But look at it. It's old." "That's not a violation," he said gently. Her mouth opened and closed like a confused goldfish. But she wasn't done yet. "What about the color?" "It's too rustic." "Paint color," Harris replied, "is not regulated." Her face reddened. "Well, what about the roof?" "That roof must break a code." "No," he said again, "it doesn't." You could physically see the fury forming behind her eyes. She needed a win. She needed some situation where she could be right, not just loud. And then she made a mistake. "Well," she snapped, "maybe you should take a look at my renovation. That is what this neighborhood should aim for. I'm making real improvements." Inspector Harris paused. "You're renovating? Did you file permits?" Her expression froze for half a second. A tiny, deadly half second. The kind that reveals everything. "Of course," she said, but the wobble in her voice betrayed her. Harris turned back to me. "Thank you for your time. I'll follow up on her renovation next." Karen stiffened. And in that moment, the universe quietly shifted. 2 days after the barn inspection, I was repairing a fence post when I heard the unmistakable rumble of the county truck. Stopping again, only this time. It pulled into Karen's driveway. I leaned on the fence, watching as Inspector Harris stepped out with a clipboard, a measuring tape, and the expression of a man preparing to sift through chaos. Karen hurried out of her house before he reached the front steps. Her smile was too wide, too stiff, like she had practiced it in the mirror. "Inspector!" "Wonderful to see you again," she said. Voice sugary enough to give a dentist nightmares. "I assume you're here to admire the progress?" Harris didn't smile back. "I'm here to verify permits and check compliance." Her smile faltered. He walked toward the renovation area, a section of her house covered in tarps. Half-finished additions, scattered tools, and framing that looked like it had been built by tired squirrels. Wires dangled from open walls. The foundation extension didn't align with the existing structure. And the roofline? Well, the roofline looked like it had lost an argument with gravity. Karen fluttered behind him. "It's still in progress. The contractor said he'll fix everything later." "Who's your contractor?" Harris asked. She cleared her throat. "Well, technically, I'm managing most of it myself." Harris stopped moving. "You're self-renovating?" She nodded, arms tightening across her chest. "With no licensed help?" Another nod. "And you filed permits?" For a long moment she didn't speak. The wind rustled the tarps. A loose board flapped. Somewhere inside, something metallic fell with a hollow, accusing clang. Finally she muttered, "I meant to." Harris exhaled slowly. "Ma'am, you can't begin structural changes without permits. That's violation number 1, and I'm seeing more." He began listing issues as he walked. Unreinforced framing, unapproved electrical work, unsupported load-bearing beams, foundation extension not up to code, improper roof pitch, unsafe temporary scaffolding, non-compliant plumbing reroute. With each violation he noted, Karen shrank a little more, like a balloon losing air. Her earlier arrogance evaporated into a fog of panic. "That's 7 violations already," Harris said. "But we're not done." Neighbors began drifting out of their homes, pretending to check mail or water plants while discreetly watching the showdown unfold. For once, every pair of eyes wasn't on my too rustic barn. They were on Karen's collapsing masterpiece. Karen tried to regain control. "This is a misunderstanding. I just wanted to improve the neighborhood." Harris shook his head. "Ma'am, you have 20 code violations so far. These need to be corrected immediately, or construction stops." Karen turned pale. Her perfect plan was crumbling faster than her crooked walls. The next morning, Karen's driveway was a scene straight out of a renovation crime documentary. Yellow caution tape stretched across the half-built addition. A bright red stop work notice was pinned to one of the misaligned beams. And standing in the middle of it all was Karen, arms folded, foot tapping, looking like she wanted to sue gravity itself. I stepped outside just in time to see Inspector Harris arriving again. This time with a folder thick enough to be a college thesis. Karen glared at him as he approached. "Is all this necessary?" she snapped, gesturing wildly at the warning signs. Harris flipped through his papers. "Ma'am, you have 20 active violations. Some are serious enough to risk structural collapse. We can't allow work to continue until everything is brought up to code by licensed professionals." Karen's jaw tightened. "But I was improving the neighborhood. This was supposed to be the model home." He raised an eyebrow. "A model of what not to do, maybe." I tried not to laugh. "I failed a little." Harris continued. "You will need licensed electricians, plumbers, structural engineers, and inspectors. And all work must be redone after permits are approved. This project is months, maybe a year behind now." Karen looked like she had just been told her favorite designer purse had been discontinued. Permanently. "This is ridiculous. Why didn't anyone tell me the rules were so strict?" Harris leveled her with the kind of look only seasoned inspectors develop. "Everyone who files permits knows. That's why you file them." She sputtered, Well, he should fix his barn too." She pointed at me dramatically, as if that would magically erase her problems. Harris didn't even glance in my direction. "His barn is fully compliant, certified, stable. You, on the other hand," he gestured to the leaning structure behind her, "built something that looks minutes away from giving up." A few neighbors chuckled under their breath. Karen heard them. Her shoulders sagged. Reality finally landed. For the first time since the whole saga began, she sounded small. "So, what do I do now?" Harris closed the folder. "Hire licensed professionals. Follow the process. And stop policing other people's property." He left her standing alone in her caution-taped kingdom. Later that afternoon, Karen walked across the road. Not marching, not storming, just walking. She stopped in front of my barn and sighed. "I guess I shouldn't have said anything about this place." "It's all right," I said. "Just follow the rules next time." She nodded quietly and went home to face the mountain she had built for herself. My barn, too rustic or not, had survived the storm. Karen's renovation? It still hasn't seen its final inspection. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment your thoughts below. Your support helps me bring more stories like this to you.